I wish I could read lips as Tucker 91.
You're good.
Can you guys hear me now? Let me know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Test 1, 2, 3.
You don't have any idea. Deep State Dawson living up to his name today, says William Howard Taft's Path.
That's
Yeah.
right. William. I like that.
Oh, my God. Well, I hope we can be heard now. I mean, you wouldn't believe the insightful thing I just stated. And I can't remember it now, so I guess we'll have to move on,
they're,
right?
they're saying they can hear us now. So
It was so
H1T
insightful,
Tucker 91,
right?
But
Yeah.
So insightful.
But yeah, so just to get into what we're going to be talking about today again, Tim Walz and Demuth and the legislative leaders had a discussion on the budget. We'll be talking about all of the details there, going through some of the clips. It's a uniparty, big government, liberal budget. We also have Phllip Parrish in studio, gubernatorial Republican candidate. We'll be talking about his campaign and all the surrounding news. Then we'll talk about MCCL, a fake pro-life group who is attacking Action for Liberty for calling out the Republicans who voted for abortion funding. So thanks again to Phllip Parrish for joining us here today.
You bet. Thank you.
Good to have you in studio. Okay, running the dials is Mr. Deep State himself, Dawson, and it looks like he was trying to sabotage us from the start. It's amazing. This episode is brought to you by Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. Not only a conservative, not only sings in my church's choir, but also a damn good real estate agent. Now, if you're buying a home, give the guys at John Galt Mortgage a chance at financing that home. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com or check them out on Facebook or X, where they got a top-notch meme game. And you'll tell pretty quickly that they think like you and me. Mm-hmm. Also, we're brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota.
And, since I think we got cut off, but, the sound didn't catch it, I want to make sure we hit all of the people in the comments already. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Tucker91, Loch Ness Monster, Truth Wins in MN, H1T, and let's see here, William Howard Taft's Bathtub, and Razzle Dazzle. So appreciate all you guys. And if you want to make sure to have your comment read, drop us a Rumble rant. We'll jump right to your question or comment.
That's such a clever name.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. We've talked about this a lot on the show. We might have some new people to the audience. If you're not from Minnesota, why does this matter to you? Well, the budget in Minnesota is a great display of what America could be, where you have a red state. It's a red state. We've got red country, but the Democrats have a better oiled machine. And so they win here more frequently, and then they implement their agenda. And then, dare I say, the Republicans, the ones that are supposed to be the correction to that, seem to go along. And you probably heard this reference: if the Democrats are driving 100 miles an hour, the Republicans are driving 60 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. The way I look at it is, if the Democrats are driving 100 miles an hour the wrong direction, you should be driving 100 miles an hour the right direction. You're not going the wrong direction. And the wrong direction is government. More and more government. Government is the problem. The solution is the free market system. It's the individual. It's the family. It's the church, independent of government. It's not government. Government's not the solution. I thought that was a universally understood thing in the Republican Party, but it doesn't seem to be, at least not when they're actually showing what they're doing, or when they're actually walking the walk, right, where they're up at the Capitol. When they talk the talk, when they're going to the campaign trail, they'll tell us one thing. So it's not a shocker that when Walz and the Republican Speaker Lisa Demuth and Aaron Murphy, the Senate Majority Leader, who we learned takes regular walks every Wednesday with Mark Johnson.
You're
That's
right.
interesting. Do they hold hands? I don't know. So it's all one party, guys.
Yeah.
So we learned today that they got a budget deal, and the media's been talking about, this thing's going to be a special session. They're going to run out of time, which at this point they probably are going to run out of time to get the stuff out of conference committee to the floor. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's Thursday, so there's a chance they could get it. But we have to go back to the point that they started from a position of weakness. Dawson, pull up the budget football field. If you have two end zones, one is the big government end zone and the other one's the small government end zone. And to put numbers to that, the small government end zone is the $52 billion budget before Democrats took over the trifecta in Minnesota, and the big government end zone is the $67 billion, which is basically where Walz was proposing to be at. And that's one side is the spending, but the other side is if you go to the blue end zone, you have $19 billion in surplus you can give back as tax cuts to the people. Let's go ahead. Let's interrupt for the Rumble Rant here.
Yeah, we got Gopher Big Guy 911 who says, off topic, but this MCCL letter about A. Farrell is going to backfire in a nuclear fashion. Pepperidge Farm remembers when MCCL used to hold Republicans and Democrats accountable for anti-pro-life votes. That's a great point. We're going to be getting into that segment at the end of the show here, but it's a great point because voters can tell when they're being lied to, and if you try to misrepresent the facts, they're going to do the research for themselves. And you're right that ultimately that's going to hurt the MCCL rather than assisting them.
You see how we're in the middle of a budget explanation, and that Rumble Rant literally disrupted it?
Yep.
You got to see that's the power of the Rumble Rant. There you go. You can get us off topic right away. Let's go back to that budget football field. So if you reduce spending, you have a lot of money that can come back to us. Now, if you really care about Minnesota families, you could give back $8,000 to a Minnesota family. That's a lot. I think that's a lot of money. I'm not uber wealthy. I think my family could use $8,000. I think that'd go a long way. Dawson's over there like, yeah, I definitely could. But that's what it is per taxpayer in Minnesota is roughly $8,000 they could give back. Now, get rid of my little window here real quick, Dawson. You can see even the fully funded government still has about $8 billion in surplus. This is what you're not hearing from anyone at the Capitol. Even if they spend $67 billion, there's still $8 billion left in surplus money, but what they want to do is put in a rainy day fund and then use it for future spending. We'll get to that in a second. So where did this negotiation start? Let's show Tim Walz and show where the House Republicans agreed to. The House Republicans were further, I should have put the end zones the opposite direction because they're further to the left than Governor Walz. The budget negotiation numbers came out today. And, I'm sorry. Let's not get to the agreed upon numbers. Dawson, pull up the A8. Okay, now this is going to be a tough document to work through. Oh, man, I almost didn't want to bring this up. Phillip, have you ever seen a document like this in state government? And if you say no, you are a very normal person here.
Unfortunately, I have.
Okay,
Yep.
you have. All right. So instead of just giving you the budget spending numbers, what you're looking at is the first two columns are the two different bienniums proposed by the Governor Walz. The next two columns are where the Senate wanted to take spending, and the last two columns are where the Republican and Democrat House wanted to spend. Okay. Instead of just giving you the total expenditures, what they're doing is they're using accounting here. So if it's in parentheses, it's subtracting. And if it's not in parentheses, it's adding. And what is it subtracting or adding from? The projected expenditures in the last budget forecast, which aren't on this document. Isn't that interesting? Very transparent government we are. So the average person doesn't really know what the hell they're looking at.
Yeah.
So using that example here, just get rid of my window for a second, Dawson, and zoom in. All we care about is the next biennium, which is on here they put 2025 to 27 because they're still probably accounting for the next month or 2 months, month and a half left of this current biennium. Okay, so if you go to the bottom, it's saying Governor Walz proposes $730,000 less than what the projected spending is. Now, if you go over, which would leave, as you see, a budgetary balance of $2.3 billion. Now, if you go over to the right here, it's the second to last column. There you go. That's the Republican and Democrat House number. You see, it's only 14 million less. Those are numbers in hundreds of thousands. So in thousands. That's 14 million less than what was projected growth in government. You see how actually Walz is proposing more cuts to that biennium spending? Now, it's not as simple as that because there's shift burden to, like counties and stuff like that, where Governor Walz, and then the next column, you can see they're making cuts to another thing. So it's not as clear cut as that. And by the way, they don't help you at all with these budget documents. But if we're level setting, that's where the negotiations start. Why are the Republicans not going $19 billion in cuts? If the DFL trifecta was so bad, that spending was so bad, why doesn't it say $19 billion in cuts, which would have a ballooning budget surplus? They complain about the Democrats blowing through the surplus. Here's how you give the surplus back to the people. Right there. You could do it, but you don't do it. Okay, now let's go to this press conference. Dawson, let's pull up Tim Walz. What did Tim Walz have to say about this great deal for Minnesota that just got reached?
So now, Phil, you have headphones as well if you're interested in
right over there,
listening to
Phil.
what's going on.
Trying to understand where both sides are coming from. And I'm pleased to say that we came up with a budget that is fiscally responsible, puts Minnesota on a continued path to fiscal responsibility, making cuts where they were needed, but investing in our people in a way that we all believe, making Minnesota the best place for a family and a child to grow up in. No one got everything they wanted. There were very difficult conversations about issues that were very dear to each of these caucuses. But at the end of the day, we were able to come up to this agreement. The work will be done now by the chairs, folks who were in the room making this happen, to start putting the touches around this to put us on a path. I'm incredibly pleased that in the first biennium, we obviously, to our constitutional responsibility, balanced that budget and leave about $2 billion on the bottom line. But the good news is, in that second biennium of the projected deficit, nearly 90% of that has been erased. And I would argue, most importantly, from the position that I have been making, and I think we came to an agreement on, is that structural imbalance on the out years in certain areas that were driving cost unsustainably. We've reduced that projected structural imbalance by 45% in this first year, meaning we don't have to face the crisis at once without undermining all of those programs.
Okay, let's stop right there. So now, notice how the politicians are focused on the budgetary balance. Now, Phil, if you end up becoming governor of Minnesota, please, let's not go down that road, because they want you focused on the budgetary balance, but there's two sides of that coin. It's not just expenditures, it's the revenue side, right? And they have to be in balance. Well, guess what? You could grow government by $50 billion and also increase taxes by $50 billion. And oh my God, guys, look, we got a budgetary balance. What a wonderful thing for Minnesota. No, it's not a good thing for Minnesota, because you taxed us more. So that's why they want to focus on budgetary balance. The Republicans should really not be playing that same game, but they do. Here is Republican Speaker Lisa Demuth, who should be negotiating for, well, like I said, I mean, I think this is common sense, and they've tweeted many times about this, that the DFL trifecta grew government by $19 billion and spent our surplus. You've heard that talking point. Okay, They've said that many times. They should have started with a $19 million cut. Seems pretty common sense, but no. Now, listen to her, and just so you understand, they've cemented in $14 billion of government spending by the DFL trifecta, and listen to how they act like this is some great deal for Minnesota.
Demuth.
Good morning. It's good to be with you. I am Speaker Lisa Demuth, and with the very unusual start that we had in the Minnesota House of Representatives, it is good to be with you at this point, standing as leaders along with the governor to explain to you where we have reached targets and a direction to continue the state moving forward is a very important piece in Minnesota history. I do want to thank the governor. As Senator Murphy mentioned, the governor invited Senate Minority Leader Mark Johnson to be in the room at all steps of the process, knowing that we are a legislature with 101 Democrats, 100 Republicans, but equally tied in the state of Minnesota. I believe a number of people didn't think we could get this work done, and we have proven to this point that we can get this work done. The global targets that we have come up with today demonstrate that in this division in the legislature, so closely divided, that we have agreed to do what is best for Minnesotans and actually making some hard decisions, but doing overall what is best. We do have a lot of work left to do, but we are leaving that to our chairs, our conference committees, and the full body to make those determinations. I'm happy to tell you that with the global targets, we are seeing the largest spending cut in state history, nearly $5 billion from biennium to biennium, and that is progress. There is movement.
Okay, let's stop right there, and I'm going to comment on that, but let's get that rumble rant
Yeah,
there.
obviously the viewers of the show, conservatives, are not impressed with Lisa Demuth. We've got a $5 rumble rant from Razzle Dazzles that says Lisa Demuth is a DFL plant that infiltrated the Republican Party along with so many other rhinos. And when you look at someone like that, where she is on the exact same page as Tim Walz, makes you question, what does the Republican Party really stand for?
Tucker. Those comments don't help, by the way. All right, so the $5 billion, okay, this is what they're talking about, the $5 billion cut, largest cut in state spending. The way I look at it, first of all, it's not Tim Walz was already at that same. Actually, Tim Walz's cut was bigger. If you're looking at that chart, his cut was bigger.
This is still the second largest budget in Minnesota history, right?
Correct. Yeah. So when you grow to the largest budget ever, and they complain about how big that budget is, and it is still massive, and then you pull back from it, I'm like, but how's that a win? It's really listen. I understand negotiating, and you're not going to get everything you want. But when you start from such a bad position, bring that football field up again. If you start from such a bad position where you're already just as bad as Tim Walz, you're already in the end zone of big government, how are you going to end up in a good position? How are you going to end up in the right end zone? You're not, right? You're so far away from scoring that it's ridiculous. And they should have started from the opposite side of the field, and then maybe you end up at the 50-yard line, okay? Because no budget passes without complete Republican support. I love all the Republicans at the Capitol. They're like, we broke up the trifecta back in January, and then there's nothing we could do. We only have half the House. What could we possibly do? I don't know. If you have half the House, no budget passes without Republican support. It's pretty simple to me. All right. So, secondly, I think the right analogy here is if your basement's flooded. So imagine the DFL flooded your basement with 19 feet of water. That's terrible, right? Everyone can agree things are being damaged. I argue $19 billion in growth of government is going to damage our culture, okay? Damage our state. All right, pull up that graphic, Dawson. So what ends up happening is the new budget deal is 14 feet of water, and they're all cheering. Yippee! Look, the largest cut of flooding in state history. It's only 14 feet of water now. No, it should be 0 feet of water. Why is this a good thing? Our basement's still flooded. But this is what they want you to focus on. And according to Tim Walz, hey, we got a budgetary balance. Isn't that a great thing? And that's even a lie. Do you know it's not true? There's not a budgetary balance. There's a budget surplus, which means the government's holding on to your money. And even that number wasn't accurate because they're holding on to another pot of money, $3 billion, for a rainy day fund that will never come because during the global pandemic, they had $3 billion and they never spent it. And that's the rainiest of all days. So they're actually holding on to more than that $2 billion. They're holding on to $5 billion of our money, doing absolutely nothing with it. It's unreal. And actually, you know what they're doing? Actually, technically, they are doing something with it. What they're doing is they're using it for the next budget year. And the reason I don't want to focus on the 28-29 biennium is like, well, who cares what the deals are on that? They're going to come back in 2 years and negotiate the budget then. So it's pointless, right? Well, it's not completely pointless because it creates the targets, but it's still, they can do whatever they want then. So it's just, to me, it's a massive compromise. Now let's look at the agreement numbers. So if you remember, Republicans only wanted to cut $14 million from the projected spending. This is the A7, Dawson. This is a budget agreement that was signed today by Walz and legislative leaders. And you're going to have to zoom in. They signed that document on the top. Scroll down to the bottom. The first column is that biennium. So you see it actually went and added $200 million more in cuts. Okay? So there's still a surplus remaining, but it's relatively, in terms of like that football field analogy or the flooding, the same budget. Yeah. There wasn't really much movement. Now, inside of that, there's some good things, right? Inside of that, we aren't going to be funding health care for illegal immigrants, adult immigrants. The children will still get funded, okay? But illegal adult immigrants don't get funded. And Hortman, this is just so funny because let's be honest why the Republicans won on that issue. There's some Democrat legislators that didn't want that vote. And let's be honest. Hochschild didn't want to take that vote. Kupek didn't want to take that vote in the Senate. Let's be honest. What's going on there? That's a really bad look when there are like healthcare costs going up for people that actually are legal citizens here, and we're giving away like what was it, $600 million to illegal immigrants? Like that's ridiculous. Children will still get it. So this is Melissa Hortman, Speaker Emeritus, Melissa Hortman, nearly tearing up when she's explaining how these people won't get health care anymore.
Following the E12 bill. I'd also like to just comment briefly on health care for undocumented Minnesotans. Undocumented people who are in Minnesota are people. They are Minnesotans. They are deserving of care. They pay taxes. They contribute to our economy. And this health coverage that they have received has provided life-saving cancer treatment, life-saving diabetes care. And so this budget agreement will end that health care for those individuals as of December 31st, 2025. We go into that eyes wide open that this will change people's lives, in some cases substantially for the worse, but it is a compromise. And under the compromise, we will be funding state government in the state of Minnesota.
Okay. Now, I don't know if that's like an Emmy-level acting job because, quite frankly, I mean, Democrats know they got pretty much most things they wanted. So their little compromise at this point is some, as they call them, undocumented people are not going to have free health care courtesy Joe and Jill taxpayer. Mm-hmm. It's a win nonetheless because that's bad. I mean, we shouldn't be paying for it, you know. And I think there is a moral argument here. You know, we don't want to see people that are hurt not getting health care, but they don't belong here, and we do need to prioritize our citizens, right? That's and if she really feels compelled to do something about it, go raise money in a charity or through a church and do that for these people. And they shouldn't be here also, right? But we obviously know their views on that. They want to give these guys sanctuary. So did this budget end up not, holding the line on taxes? No. There are going to be some tax increases. So if you hear that there aren't tax increases, now they're minor, but go ahead. This is the A4. And then I want to get your views on this. I'm going to shut up a little bit, Phil, because you're running to replace this buffoon that's at the behest of this press conference. But this is the tax cuts that come out of it, or tax increases. Go ahead and play it.
It really was. When we look at the amount of taxes that Minnesotans have faced over the last few years, we wanted to make sure that Minnesota families could afford their lives. We know that there are not across the board tax increases. There will be a small increase on the tax on cannabis. That is almost right sizing it, or it was very low. We were one of the very low taxed states on cannabis. There will be an increase there. And then on the electricity, there will be a repeal of the electricity tax for data centers going forward. And so those were the two areas.
She's actually misspeaking there. It's a repeal of the deduction, which in other words is increasing the taxes that these data centers pay. So they are increasing taxes, probably, as you brought up at the pre-show, I don't know how much of tax revenue there is from a thing that's legal, but there's no dispensaries for
right, exactly. They're not even selling the marijuana yet, and and also it just shows the Demuth thinks that the government needs even more money, which is crazy to think that that we need to be raising taxes at this time. But obviously it's a sin tax. It's not as big of a deal, but it still shows that why does the government need more money? They have way too much as is.
And the data centers, I think there's a better argument for. Why would you increase taxes on data centers by repealing that electricity write-off or that deduction? That's beyond me, because government's too big. And also what's interesting in what you just said is, so they held the line on no new taxes, but what about repealing the taxes that funded that $19 billion that the Democrats grew government to? And that wasn't that from my understanding wasn't even proposed in any of these budgets. And then the last thing, and then I'll get your you weighing in on this, Phil, is this all gets funded. When you get down to the numbers of it, this gets funded by robbing our surplus that's owed to you and me by $2.1 billion. Okay? That's how they are funding this. We are owed money from the government, and they're going to take that and use it to spend. That's why, on that football field, I was like, there's $8 billion. There should be $8 billion in surplus money, but they're going to take, because I think if I remember right, revenues are going to be like $64 billion and the expenditures are about 66 some billion dollars. So they're literally going to fund this government with $2 billion of surplus money. And nowhere along the way were the Republicans first acknowledging there was a surplus. And since they didn't acknowledge it, number two, they never said give it back. And I think that should be the standard position of the Republican Party, is to give back the surplus money. So if you really want to help Minnesota families, I can't think of anything better than giving them back the money that they overpaid. All right. Is that a crazy position, Phil? It seems to me what the Republicans are supposed to stand for.
Yeah, well, in my experience, it's pretty par for the course. A lot of these people don't do the actual real serious work behind the scenes. I'll break it down into a smaller platform to myself. I run a $4.3 million budget in my organization. That might seem like pennies to most people with regards to state government, but the principles are the same. I'm a zero budget an analyst, and I start from zero. You don't get a budget. You don't get a line item. And then you're going to propose to me what you're doing with your program or your particular activity. I'm going to analyze what you've done over the last 3 to 5 years. I'm going to come up with some averages. I'm going to come up with maybe some issues with, well, hey, we stuck all this money into this particular project or program, but it hasn't garnered any results. And so I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to say, well, I'm sorry, but you're going to take a huge cut because you're not garnering any results. And by the way, your overhead is to the point where it doesn't make sense. So we need to, as an organization, put that money here, which is producing something decent, respectful, and has integrity. And that's the way to look at it. But a lot of these people, I mean, no disrespect to any of them, because I realize that they're busy. But, you know, I have a full-time job. I farm, family, doing a campaign.
When you say you got a $4.3 billion budget, is that the farm?
$4.3 million budget.
Did I say billion?
Accidentally.
This is actually the problem. When you go from
Millions to billions.
like private sector to state to feds, it goes million, billion, trillion. So I screw this up all the time. So 4.3 million, is that the farming operation?
I'm the executive administrator of Divine Mercy Catholic Churches and Schools. And we run a very serious organization that it kind of flies under the wire. People don't think much about us because we don't necessarily appear to be that big, but we're a big organization. We do a lot of good work. We just got done building a $16 million school. The fact is the principles of budgeting and the principles about what you referred to with regards to the transparency piece are all the same. And especially when it comes to nonprofits, you have to maintain a level of integrity and dedication that really is transparent. Because in the same principle as a nonprofit, government should be running the same way. You don't own that. You don't own us. You don't own our businesses. You don't own our hard work. You are serving us. And you can tell by the way these people present themselves on camera, in my view, my opinion, I mean no disrespect to any of them because I'm sure they try to work hard, but their physical presence doesn't even suggest that they're reflecting, I work for you. Here's what I tried to do for you today.
I mean, they say that, but yeah.
But their posture, their tone, their choice of narrative, clearly this entire narrative was scripted before they walked out there. And they want to portray this particular narrative is pre-designed to say, hey, we're working together, go team, go. And it becomes, you're correct in your analysis earlier, it comes off as disingenuous. People are smart enough to do their own research. And that's what needs to continue to happen. So when you break down a budget about what's really happening, you have to take a look at what's really happening across the spectrum of the agencies throughout Minnesota. And when you go to this point on stage talking about this, but you've ignored the fact that hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on buildings that have no people in them, the stuff that Doge has exposed, the money laundering that's gone on in Minnesota, they've set themselves up again for the opportunities to launder money. And they don't maybe want to call it laundering money, but when you take money from the hardworking middle class, the hardworking poor, and even from those in poverty, some of our senior citizens are in poverty, and you're making them pay sales tax on what? I mean, this doesn't make sense. And so these are the kinds of things, like I say in my piece on parishformn.com, we're talking about a bold financial plan that I put out. You just get to the news tab and you'll scroll down about the third page or so, you'll find that bold stance today. You're talking about people that don't do the work. They don't have any concept of the effect on hardworking Minnesotans. They don't even, I was at a, we'll talk about it probably somewhere in the program, but I was at a gathering the other day, and the physical posture and language and just rhetoric of the group, it's disgusting how disconnected from Minnesotans.
A political group, I'm assuming you're saying?
Many of these people are. Their lack of
Are you
understanding.
disguising what the group is?
I wasn't wanting to go there yet, but we'll get there.
When do we get
a little dinner we had the other night.
We don't beat around the bush. Oh, the GOP Lincoln-Reagan dinner.
The Lincoln-Reagan dinner. I was very disappointed in a few things, but that's another story. The point is, the evidence of this group of people that really don't put in the hard work, they don't do their due diligence, they don't dig into the who, what, when, where, why, and they project themselves as caring and concerned and all unified, when in truth, they haven't done the work.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's back to your point. You still have so remember, and I know this sounds a little bit in the weeds, I'll give you an analogy. I'll give you a story of my first budget that I had to tear apart. I was brought into an organization in southern Minnesota as a principal, and I was provided opportunity to take a look at the numbers, try to decide. The person that hired me, one of his first statements was, "Phil, your job is to keep me out of jail." So, okay, I don't know what that meant at the moment, but okay.
It's an old saying when you're a treasurer or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I take a look at the budget, and immediately what was given to me I could see was the budget, the projected budget. So back to your other point about planning a budget or budget planning, I can put whatever the hell sorry, I'm not.
No, we swear. We do need the swear jar. We have forgotten the swear jar. Bridget wants us to have a swear jar.
Is there a $1 swear jar?
Well, we did think it was gonna. Yeah, it's something we need to do.
I didn't bring any cash with me, so I'm going to avoid swearing because I don't want to point.
Well, we don't have the jar yet.
Okay, so
that might look bad too if we take money from a candidate.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to give it to charity. How about that?
Right. So
by charity, I mean Tushy's Wings.
You can easily discern that it's a projected budget, and I go back to the CEO of the organization. I say, listen, you gave me the projected budget. You didn't give me what I asked for. I need the accountant to give me the real numbers. It took weeks to get the real numbers. I'll get to my story or get to the point in a minute. But essentially, I started reverse engineering. X number of pupils because of the Girard treatment programs or Nexus organization or New Dominion School. Because of the process of having students from all across Minnesota and a couple other states, you can't just have a blanket per pupil rate because they're different. But at the end of the day, you can take the average, you can take the average number of students, you can do the per pupil rate, and you can reverse engineer it. That sounds like really complex stuff apparently to some people, but okay. So reverse engineer it. Here's how much money should be in salaries, wages, and supplies and programming. Here's how much money should be in bricks and mortar, blah, blah, blah. Well, I had to go back to the CEO and say, yeah, you hired me and the first thing you said was keep me out of jail. You're going to jail. And what? How can that be? Well, the clinical department was getting an terrible amount of money from the educational funding that was going to the clinical, which by the grace of God, Nexus Corporation, the actual CEO of the whole thing, he immediately got wind of what I was up to, and rightly so. He had the courage and the strength to say, by gosh, Phil's right, and let's make this right because we don't want to be in trouble. So I know that sounds like an unusually unrelated story, but the same principles apply. And we have agencies in Minnesota that are everything from what Doge found in D.C. and times 10.
Right. I mean,
they
didn't even get access to do the whole government.
We have buildings operated that have hardly anybody in them.
Yeah.
I put out some policy pieces with regards to people showing up for work, and I got some hits about it, but mostly got support. And those that legitimately work from home because their region of responsibility is remotely tied to their region, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people right now in Minnesota. We have government agencies that have employees that don't even live in Minnesota. and have never been at a desk inside the building maybe once a year. That kind of stuff, you might think, well, that's only $40,000, or that's only $10,000, or oh, that's only a $100,000 salary. Well, you add that up times, even if you have 10 agencies, with all 10 agencies have 50 to 100 employees, you take a 50% of those employees and you start doing that math, you're talking about hundreds of thousands and into the millions of dollars. That why are you spending it? So to your point,
well, we need to be at $19 billion.
Growing
we're going to have millions of dollars. We're going to have billions.
Growing the bureaucracy and sustaining the bureaucracy has become the ultimate downfall.
Well, isn't that the thing that, and this is what gets me so interested about this subject as we brought up on the budget, and going back and forth with Wednesday Walter on Twitter, which is really funny, is like the Republicans act like this is some big win, but you're funding the bureaucracy, the bloated bureaucracy. At some point, isn't that the problem? Isn't government too big? So, yeah, you cut $5 billion. By the way, so did Tim Walz. Okay, so you're doing exactly what he did. You guys were kind of forced to do it, right? So that's not the big win, but it's like you're still funding this bloated government. And I want to say that Republicans were campaigning prior to the DFL trifecta on how big government is, but certainly after the DFL trifecta, they said it's a big bloated government. Then show us I'm sorry, I got to be careful on this. Show us the proposal. Because obviously they're not going to get everything you want in negotiations, but show us the proposal. Yeah. And they never do. They never show us where they're going to cut.
So the lack of transparency is disgusting and shocking. I want to be really, I'm not going to try to disagree with you, but I want to point out something about how clever Tim Walz was in how, you're right in analyzing the way it looks that Tim made more of a cutback than they did. But if you analyze where it started, it's kind of like the art of the deal. Tim Walz started in January 15th, what I wrote about on my website, at a place where just astronomically out of control and not addressing any concerns or issues. And so then you come to this point where you're correct in your analysis. It looks like he's cut more, but he started from, again, it's back to budget planning. Budget sheets don't mean anything to me. They mean nothing. What it means to me is when I go to the accounting office and I say, give me the real-time numbers of what was spent. Oh, by the way, all these line items of hundreds of millions of dollars that went to what, and you can't trace them and you can't track them and you can't tell me what you actually did with it, that's a problem. So the lack of transparency, and like you're suggesting, the lack of actually show us what you had for the planning. Even right now, since we started talking, I was doing some research as to what all is being talked about publicly. And it's disgusting. It's shockingly disgusting. Now, whether everybody gets back in a room and says, hey, we're only going to present this story when it comes to media time, blah, 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 it shouldn't be that way. With the lack of leadership Tim Walz is demonstrating and trying to make himself look good, and in the end, the systemic problems of not actually attacking the issues and being transparent, he gets away with hiding behind all this and not taking the courage to stand there and say, listen, we have an opportunity here. We have a split, kind of a 50-50 deal here. Let's get to business here and do the right thing. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or Independent or Green Party. I don't care. Tell me what the truth is here. Let's talk about it together openly, and let's get to a budget planning that can be fiscally responsible. It can be balanced. And by the way, every time, like you've already pointed out, every time you talk about a dollar spent, you're talking about a dollar taken from tax-paying citizens.
Right.
So when you get on stage, when you get in front of people, when you get on the House floor, you need to start demonstrating that kind of respect.
And I think people understand and they'll appreciate it, honestly. I think we could have that moment with the public, and it seems void from the conversation these days. Phil, you're running against Tim Walz. Explain it. Like, what's going through your mind? Why would you take on that office? I mean, I know you've run for other things in the past.
Yeah.
Why are you shooting for the governorship?
Yeah, because my first round, I did it because I was so angry about what all you were being told when I was coming off my last set of active duty orders.
That was 2014, if I remember right, correct?
So the first governor race was I started in 2017.
Yeah, but didn't you run for Senate in 2014?
2014 was another angry moment. I was between a set of orders, and legally I could run for office And I ran against Al Franken because that was to do with my extreme anger and disappointment about what all you were told about Benghazi, 9/11, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. What an issue that was. Let's go ahead and do the...
Yeah, we got a quick rumble rant from Oban. Says, I bet Wednesday Walter would deem Mr. Parrish unqualified. And here's a question for you, Phil. It says, will Phllip Parrish going for, and will he abide by the GOP endorsement? So will you abide by the GOP
well,
convention's
actually, let's
endorsement?
start with, are you vying for the GOP endorsement?
Yeah, sure. Are you going for it, and then will you abide?
Right. So I've been very clear in all my public statements, and you can pull it up on the website, and I hope people publish it. I am a Republican because we're a constitutional republic, period. Constitutional republic, no questions. The principles of democracy cannot function without the rule of law. I am a Republican. Mm-hmm. I have known this game since the first day that I got involved with Steve Swigum when I was a junior in high school. I know this game, and I call it a game not out of disrespect, but I know this game because of being a counterterrorism specialist and foreign policy specialist and an intelligence officer in the military. And I have learned the game so well that I called Alex Plekish in, I want to say, the first or second week of January. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, I want to be very clear about my stance on this, and I want to be very transparent. Can you promise me you're going to honor the endorsement? As you can imagine.
Yep, that's a fair question these days.
You know, that got met with a little bit of silence. Alex was not disrespectful to me. He wasn't, he entertained my question. But here's my, as you might have seen on the Professor Penn podcast, my advice to all Republicans is let's stop playing charades. We're either going after running a state in the Republican Party as an endorsement grassroots process, or you're going to do it as an endorsement process. We have been in the grassroots organizations in Minnesota have been infected with and destabilized by a premeditated attempt to use the primary in a way to destabilize the organizations, so that those who really want the big money, the chosen candidate, always get to find a way to the primary.
But of course, you know, I'd actually counter that with one statement here. I do like the fact that we have a system where if the party was corrupt, the primary is a alternative, right? So if the because there are other states that are closed.
So hear me out. I'm not far off of what you're saying. So my question, Republicans in the last 10 years has been growing from trying to suggest and trying to educate to now I'm flat out in front of you telling you I am not going to play that game. I'm not interested in the divisive politics. I'm not interested in the rhetoric. I'm not interested in undermining people after the endorsement. Stop aiming at the wrong target. Start aiming at.
So what does that mean?
That means you're aiming at the primary. And I've told Republicans across the state on all my platforms, stop talking about the endorsement and stop talking about and honoring it.
So that means you're just focused on the primary.
I'm focused on the primary, period.
Do you plan to seek the GOP endorsement?
If they give me the endorsement, I will happily accept it.
Well, yeah, but are you actively going to campaign
I don't
for
care.
But you won't be at the convention then to speak?
I'll be there if they want me there.
Okay. But who's they, meaning Plekish and the other party leadership? Central
leadership is the controlling body. Alex has a formal head, but the state central, who, by the way, are the same people for the last 30 years, I can say that with proof because I've been there multiple times.
Actually not true at all. There's a lot more new faces.
Oh, yeah, no, there's a lot more new faces.
State central delegation these days, isn't there, Jeff?
Yeah, there's a lot more new faces. Absolutely there's new faces.
We might know something about that, but that might be why the Star Tribune keeps talking about extra for liberty and why Tom Emmer hates us so much.
Exactly. You are correct.
Okay, so, I mean, listen, I'm not trying to pin you down on this thing because it is what it is, but I feel like you're kind of being a politician here, okay? So are you planning on going to the convention and making, because I don't know if they're just going to, hey, Phllip Parrish, are you going to come? I don't think that's how it works. You state your intention. So is your intention to actually show up to the convention?
I will file the appropriate papers. I will say yes and no to the proper questions. Will they allow me? That's up to them.
Well, I mean, I would advocate for them to allow you because I think that's corrupt when they don't allow you. So
Well,
And obviously the establishment's not going to come...
You've seen this over and over again, Jake. You've seen them undermine
I definitely
people.
have.
Yeah,
Right.
and you can personally attest to how everybody promises. We get past the endorsement. Oh, by the way, a GOP group is raising money and funding candidates behind
But
the endorsement.
that's the right to do that because,
So why do it?
well, it's one thing for a outside group to do it. Or when in this, are you saying an actual political party unit of the Republican Party, or are you just saying any
Absolutely.
group? Oh yeah,
Kurt Dowd and organizations funded candidates
100%,
against the
yes.
endorsed candidates.
100%
Definitely.
agree with you on that. I don't know how that translates to governor because there really is.
Oh,
no
it absolutely
entity.
does.
But you're right at the point. Well, how does it do that? Like,
They have funded alternative candidates
who's
repeatedly.
they though?
Every time we've had an election, they've funded
But
other
you keep
government.
saying they. Who's they? I don't understand who they is.
GOP political organizations have funded separate candidates every time they don't get there. They did
governor, I
it.
guess
They
you-
did it with Jeff Johnson.
Yeah, the Jobs Coalition, for example.
But that's
I
not
guess
a
is-
Republican.
Okay.
Yeah, the Jobs Coalition has every right to do what
Listen,
they want
Jeff
to do.
Johnson
We could be.
and Tim Plenty, more than well known what happened in 2018,
Right.
which I was personally involved with, and all of that GOP money with Tim Plenty undermining Jeff Johnson.
Yeah, but hold on. But that's money that donors, on their own, will
I think we're saying the same,
gave.
I think we're saying the same thing, Jake. But I don't understand your approach.
Because I do think it's important to specify that the party has backed its gubernatorial candidates. The party did back Jeff Johnson. I'd have a big issue if the party
And half the state central went to Tim Plenty after the endorsement.
Well, not from like some official capacity, but yes, individuals have.
So then,
done
what
that.
does that set up for in the primary?
Well, I mean, as long as you can only control the institution, right?
So why
You're right.
is-
The individuals that make up the institution are their own free will
So-
people, and they can do what they want.
So why play the divisive agenda for all the
well,
endorsement?
I think the argument for it, Phil, is that if you win the GOP endorsement, you are a more powerful candidate going to the primary. I can't think of an example.
I would agree to that to extent, but then you're going to spend how much money fighting with people to go to the primary? It doesn't make sense. It's a losing game.
Well, that's on them. Last time Scott Jensen, and I was no big fan of this, won the GOP endorsement. He didn't really have a formidable opponent in the primary. Everyone bailed.
Yeah,
Everyone
not a
backed
serious
him.
one, right?
I wouldn't completely agree with that, but they wasted a lot of time and money having to fight again to the primary. Why?
No, but who fought against Jensen in the primary? He was. You always get like the Captain Jack Sparrow crazy candidates that enter, but
There
he
were
didn't.
there were three others.
There were
No.
two people that ran against Jensen. Neither of them were very serious
We're talking
candidates.
about guys
by that
Serious
time,
or
but-
not? What are you talking
Well,
about?
so anyone can go to the Secretary of State for $100, sign up to be a candidate for any
Exactly.
party.
That's my point.
Well, what's your point on that? I mean, there's no big apparatus behind it.
I think we're saying the same thing. I don't understand your approach of why you're having to defend the endorsement, because the endorsement process in competition with a primary is an intentional fight.
Well, I guess the reason why the endorsement process is important is because the people who care most about it, the people who are willing to show up to these meetings, not just people who are going to vote one time at the election poll. We want people who have who care more, want to have more influence, and there's a certain amount of the population that's going to be voting just based on the endorsement. And I agree 100% with you that there's all of these crooked politicians that promise to abide by the endorsement, and then as soon as it comes time to, as soon as they don't win that endorsement, they go to a primary. We saw that in District 2 with Joe Tayrab.
Yeah,
so it's a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So back to the gentleman's question. The bottom line is I'm a Republican. I'm going to file as a Republican. If I'm welcome at the state convention, God bless them all. And I would happily accept the endorsement. But I am telling people up front, I'm not playing the game. I'm not playing the divisive game.
I'm not actually. I have no issue with what you're saying here. So Steve Boyd, are you familiar with Steve Boyd up in Congressional District 7? He had that same position. I think that guy's a man of integrity, very much like that guy, running against Michelle Fishbach, who, speaking of which, Alex Plekish, I see Terry's referencing this, Alex Plekish has unilaterally endorsed, using the MNGOP's name, Michelle Fishbach, for re-election. So you're making actually a decent point. I haven't seen that at the gubernatorial level, but they've done it in CD7. So Steve had this position of, well, I want to vie for the endorsement, but they might actually be corrupt. And yeah, he was pretty insightful in that. They literally threw out hundreds of delegates in Otter Tail County. So he said, I'm not going to be bogged down to it. And also because I'm not a liar, I'm not going to be forthcoming on this. Meanwhile, Michelle Fischbach pledged she will abide by the endorsement, and a week before said, nope, I don't care if I pledge it. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right. We see it in like state house, state senate, and these congressional races where it's a little bit more rigged. Sometimes they're able to, rig these conventions. It's a little bit tougher with the state convention, it seems, just because of the size. So what would you say to that if, I guess some people in the comments are saying the 2018 convention was rigged. I don't have any information on that. Are you saying that you think that there is a potential that the GOP would rig the state convention against you?
I'm not going to use the word rigged. I'm going to use the word by design and by pattern of behavior, which all of us have witnessed. You've each referenced it. Why would an intelligent person with integrity and decency, why would a person agree to play that game again when they've proven year after year after year that they will do whatever it takes? If their chosen candidate doesn't get in, they're just going to undermine it anyway.
Right.
Why would an intelligent person who now I'm collecting money off of my contributors, why would I disrespect my contributors by playing someone else's game? So what I'm proposing is, let's just take a basketball game. All of us watch basketball, all of us watch football, for the most part, others than some refs during last year. But, you have hash marks, you have boundaries, you have goal lines. Back to your analogy, you have goal lines. Stealing your analogy, why would I start on the wrong end of the playing field? It doesn't make sense. And I'm intelligent enough, and I'm experienced enough in this game, in this arena. When I walk in that arena, this isn't an arena, hey, Phil's just trying to get used to who's who here. No, I'm walking in the arena telling you this is the arena. This is the arena we're playing in. You're not going to get me into your pseudo arena of, we're going to treat the grassroots all nice and special, and you're all great people, and we love you and we need you. And then you get to the end result, and they disrespect all the grassroots. They
disrespect it. Or, and it just hit me, like the argument I always make for Trump in 2020, right? It's funny how history writes itself. Because this last election, I said this on the show, and I don't know if you've ever thought this, but like Trump's had so much on the line for his life in 2024 because he was either going to be a career loser and 2016 was a fluke, or he's a career winner and 2020 was a fluke. And the story as it's been written now is 2020 was a fluke. And it's like, okay, so he says they cheated, and I don't think the evidence is there, right? Even on Joe Rogan's podcast, Trump couldn't articulate how the Democrats cheated. We all suspect it. But you know what we can say for sure? The election was rigged. They changed election laws, a lot of times not by legislatures. 51 intelligence officials said that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. They basically framed the President of the United States as a Russian asset and a traitor to this country. That was a rigged election of all rigged elections, just like Alex Blackish is rigging the election for CD7 by before people even caucus and become delegates. He is now saying the party endorses Michelle Fischbach. That is a rigging of an election, and they shouldn't be doing that. So I think you actually make a very good point. I think the reason I originally asked that was just from a campaign perspective, is that your move is to make the play for the endorsement, or is it going to the primary? It sounds like you want to make a play at that endorsement, but you don't want to be boxed in if the system's rigged.
If they are willing to finally listen to my advice that I have given repeatedly in writing to now 3 different chairs and central leadership, both in person and in writing, if they are finally willing to listen, I will happily participate. Under the current circumstances, as you saw, there was some legislation where they tried to change the endorsement dates and the primary dates. My advice and my position to everyone is, as every Republican, Libertarian, Green, I don't care what party you're from, you cannot abide by the endorsement process right now because it's intentionally set up to hurt you. There is no way around that, because even with the legislation where they tried to change the dates and move things, because they know the game, and the people that wrote
that's why they changed it. Any election law is being changed.
That's why
There's an agenda behind it.
That's why they wrote the legislation that they wrote just this last winter and tried to get through, but then they put it on a shelf because everybody got angry. I think Action for Liberty actually did a piece on it. And the fact is, even if they had passed everything that day, the effect on 2026 is little or none, because there was no hope with Governor Walz in office. There's no hope with them to upend. I don't even look at it as a Republican problem. It's a political elite and their handlers problem. They have purposefully set up, whether people want to believe me or not, do your own research. They have set up, I've done this long enough and I've done the research well enough, and the patterns of, I'm a patterns guy. The patterns of behaviors are undeniable. You can't, if you ignore the patterns of behaviors, you're a fool, an absolute fool. And the bottom line is they've set up the endorsement process to be in competition with the primary process in the date of the primary and the date of the endorsement, especially state convention. They've set this up on purpose to do the net result of what we have all witnessed for 30 years better. And that's a fact. It's not hyperbole. It's not guessing game. It's straight math and data points that you can analyze over the last 20 and 30 years.
Well, the way I look at it, and you make it a good point, I just want the game to be defined. I want the rules to be defined, and then let us play inside those rules. And they do want to tweak those rules and redefine it. But the nice thing about the endorsement process is that it allows the average guy to get politically involved. And, anyone could go to caucus and become a delegate. That's the nice part. The issue is there is rigging, there is cheating. We've definitely cataloged this before, like Morrison County, Ottertail County.
I definitely support what your statement about the average person getting involved. 100%. Republican Party across Minnesota is the only organization. Tell me the last time you saw a MNDFL caucus like our Republican caucuses. And where are the numbers and where are the people? It doesn't exist.
I mean, they're ready to throw out the election of their vice chair, David Hogg. It's so funny to me. So, and by the way, rigging. They rigged the election 2 cycles in a row against Bernie Sanders. And that little bitch comes right back and pleads with him and endorses their candidates. Like, Bernie Sanders is the biggest little bitch on the planet. Sorry, once again, money in the swear jar. But it's like, literally, he has been played so many times, and he always comes crawling back, asking for more. And
again, a patterns guy, patterns of behaviors, is that happenstance, or is that actually part of the game plan?
Oh, it's definitely the game plan. And that's the thing about the Democrats. There's no denying that they got a game plan, and they will execute that game plan. Do you think we're some geniuses on this show? Maybe we are. I don't know. Maybe we should be like Walter and toot our own horn. I don't think so. We read it. We called this a year before it happened. We said Joe Biden would stay on as the candidate to clear out the primary field. Check. They did it. And then they would install a new candidate. Now, I thought it was Michelle Obama, and I thought it was going to be at the convention. But we weren't that far off. They literally, and we even said it would be some health scare with Biden. Yeah, right? So he leaves, and it was before the convention, right before the convention, but the deal is done, and they install Kamala Harris. And I think maybe Michelle wouldn't do it, but honestly, they should have done someone else because she was so terrible. But that's what they did. They rigged this election. And anyone that thinks that they just finally figured out after that debate Joe Biden wasn't as smart as attack and his mental faculties were there, and they had a crisis mode and had to figure out who the candidate is. Anyone who thinks that, I got a bridge to tell you. Because any bright-minded individual who's not Jake Tapper, actually Jake Tapper knew it and probably still lied, they knew that these guys were rigging, and they rigged that election. And they and there's so many reasons I voted for Trump. Trump's surging again, Jesse. Trump is surging in my heart. But one of the things, that didn't even have so much to do with Trump is the fact that I am voting against that. If that succeeds, if the Democrats could literally have this puppet candidate who's senile and clear out the primary field, like one guy in Minnesota, Dean Phillips, at least was out there voicing his objection to this, and they all ostracized this guy. If that worked and they installed Kamala Harris, who seems like a smart person, but not when she does media. She's awful. And if that worked, our future is doomed in America.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Give me Orange Man with mean tweets over that.
Yeah.
So there's so many reasons. Okay, Phil, I remember you merged on the scene 2014 Senate race against Frank, as you mentioned. You showed up to the endorsing convention. Jack and I did the show. We're leading the Tea Party Alliance at the time.
Yeah.
Boy, this goes back. This is over 10 years ago.
This is awesome. Yeah.
So, we I think we were very beneficial to you because, I mean, the candidates were terrible. Mike McFadden ends up winning the endorsement, like the establishment types.
Again,
seems like a nice guy, by the way. It was such a terrible campaign.
More proof.
Yeah. So, so then I think you ran for something again. So we kind of knew you going back to that time frame. I think we had you on the show. Somehow we fell out of favor of each other.
We kind of fell out for a while because, successful people surround themselves with people that bring out the best in you. I have made my errors over the last 10, 12 years. Some of the people I've surrounded myself with brought out the best in me. Some of them brought out the worst in me. Like I said, with especially the Senate race, I was angry. I was what you were all being told about 9/11 Benghazi. And then fast forward to the governor race. I came out of my last set of orders being a whistleblower for the daycare fraud. I was angry. I'm really disappointed and angry. I'm a red, white, and blue, born to be a fighter, Minnesotan, American citizen. That's just who I am. Like it or lump it, that's who I am. This is what I was born to do.
Is this 2018 that you were running for
So
governor?
2018.
Okay.
So I'm angry. My motivations are to just talk and to just my position, my mindset was more about people got to hear this. Just got. I was angry, and so at that time where we had some falling out after the 2018 race, and then some stuff happened with the GOP leadership, and I ran for the Republican Party chair. Here's what got me really off track with lots of people, and I lost lots of connections. I was getting very angry and disappointed in all the gotcha stuff. And whether you guys were directly guilty of that or whether it was indirect or happenstance or some of the people you had associated with you, it doesn't really matter to me, but that's the explanation is I was getting very disheartened in the gotcha stuff.
What do you think people are trying to get you on? Is there
not gotcha mean, but just gotcha in general.
Oh, the
approach to.
I don't apologize for that against these corrupt politicians at all. I still play that game.
Right. The approach to getting after some of these politicians.
Yeah.
I can understand it to an extent, and I can appreciate some of the exposure of what are you doing here and why are you doing that. I totally support that. But some of the gotcha stuff just went too far. For example, when myself, and I'm not going to go into the details because it's not the point of today's episode, but when myself and gentleman, we called him front line, the gentleman that killed in a car accident. Why is that? That's embarrassing. I forgot his name.
Breitbart?
Beard, big guy, Worthington area. Oh, God, forgive me. I forgot.
A guy got killed in a car accident from Worthington?
We called him Frontline Joe. He was a big Trump supporter. Embarrassing.
Yeah, okay,
I guarantee you. I guarantee you know who I'm talking about. But that's the point.
That's too bad.
He and I and a half dozen people, we actually uncovered who started the Jeff Johnson as a pedophile narrative. We actually caught behind the scenes and had on record.
I don't even remember that accusation.
Yeah, we had it on record of who started it and who was prolificating it. And I got very, very angry at specific groups within the GOP. And in that fallout, I was getting angry with a lot of people because I just didn't appreciate.
We were obviously big Jeff Johnson fans, so you didn't think we were behind it.
So
what specifically got
you guys?
Because we were looking back, I'm like, well, I know Phillip had a
actually.
With us,
I don't know as I can remember.
Terry says Front Row Joe. That's right.
Front Row Joe. Thank you.
Hey,
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, he has a real name though.
Becky Hack, I'm keeping track of the swear
Front
jar.
Row Joe.
And Brad Ganser, geniuses with no show prep. Sure, it's a hang.
Yeah.
You know, you got the haters.
The haters
Speaking of
will always
haters,
come.
he's playing gotcha.
Yeah, the haters would always come.
No,
But
we,
yeah,
were,
so
we
I-
were looking back at.
I got
on a
really
s-
caught up in all of the
Okay.
just the garbage, the negativity.
I mean, and that's fair. You know, there's a lot of negativity. It's hard to be in politics full time. You know,
Yeah.
I understand why Trump is the way he is. The thing about Trump, I try not to judge people unless I meet them. I fail at that one quite a bit, but I will judge Joe Biden very much. Okay, but
Yeah.
Trump, from some many accounts of people that I trust, and as an individual on a human level, is a very kind, decent man. Can make fun of himself. You know, it's not lost on me that he could do 3 hours on Joe Rogan like no problem.
Right.
Because it's kind of hard to lie. That's why Kamala wouldn't do it. Like her advisor's like, no, you can't do it. You
Well,
will not do well, right?
A lot of people wouldn't do this show.
Well, yeah, for other reasons. Joe is not political. I will play gotcha if people I think have the wrong intentions. Joe is a very considerate, inquisitive guy.
Yeah.
Joe doesn't have an agenda.
Correct.
And he's having a conversation. He's got issues with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's got issues with Kamala, but he would have a conversation.
Yeah.
The thing about Joe Rogan is you're doing 3 hours and your real true self is going to come out.
Right.
And the idea that Trump can do it like that, no problem. And it's not just Joe Rogan. He did all of them. So
It's because
the
of
thing I hear is Trump is a really genuine person, but that's not the persona you get in public. And I do understand and empathize with old school Republicans who have a problem with Trump and can't get over Trump. They have TDS because of how he acts. And I get that, I understand. And I don't necessarily agree with all the way Trump acts, but I think Trump is acting because he knows he's in the realm of a bunch of cheaters and liars. And that's how I approach politics. The people that hate me in politics, and a lot of times they hate me, as we'll get into this MCCL thing, because we're calling out some corruption. But I think they also don't like some of the things the way that I approach. I hear people say, well, we don't like how Action for Liberty approaches politics. Like, I'm a loving, kind guy. Well, kind, I don't know. But I'm a loving guy. I get along with people very well, okay? Yeah. But when you get in the realm of politics, you don't win the game of politics by writing love letters to politicians.
Exactly.
It doesn't work. And so you have to be confrontational.
Yeah.
Now, you can say good things when they do good things, and that's rare, few and far between. But you have to be confrontational because I really, truly believe, and hopefully this is how Donald Trump approaches it, that what we're fighting for is so important, so sacred, and that's liberty or the greatness of America.
Right.
So that's just
so
how,
again, we're saying more of the same thing than not.
well, it sounds like
I don't
that.
know
It
how
sounds
we
like,
got off the wrong foot or right
well,
foot.
no, yeah,
but the bottom line is you're queuing in on some very key points.
right.
And I'll use an analogy like this as my early days in teaching. And it ties to your comment about Trump's persona. I'm 6'4", 270. I can't control what you see or look at or hear on a superficial level. I can't control it. But if I need to use it, I'm going to use it. I think that's kind of what you're referring to with a persona for Trump. On the other hand, we're in a more calm and long-term discussion. You're going to see the depth. Now, the reason why some of these politicians can't do the depth is because there isn't any depth there. Right. They haven't done the work. They don't have the expertise. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the commitment. They're not even in it for the right reason.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Exactly. People have to understand in politics that these politicians you're dealing with, the vast majority of them do not have the same objective you have, right? Politics makes a lot more sense once you understand that. And if you think because they say they believe in a unborn baby being able to live, or you think because they say government should shrink and taxes should come down, because they think that you have the right to keep and bear arms, because they say that, they are being authentic. That's not true. What they really want to do is get reelected.
Right.
And they'll say that to you knowing it's probably going to help them in some way to get to that objective, which is election or reelection.
Right.
And the proof that they don't believe it is, well, as we covered at the beginning of the show, their actions never follow suit.
Exactly.
I mean, the Republicans have half the House. Where were the pro-gun bills? Where was the repeal of the gun control bills, right? I know you're not going to... Well, actually, we don't know that until you get a vote. Maybe a Democrat would have voted for that repeal. You don't know that. You only have the Speaker of the House. You can get those votes to the floor. Yeah. All right, so because we kind of had a falling out, Phil, I don't know your views on the whole COVID pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So how did you? Sorry to. I think the most important thing I want in the next governor is someone that would have navigated that world the correct way and will make sure it never happens again. So, where did you fall on the spectrum during COVID?
So I was ostracized a lot. So you have to have a baseline of understanding of who, what, when, where, who I am. As a information dominance warfare officer, as a nearly 22-year veteran, a lot of my job was preparing the battle space. Bear with me. You do an extensive amount of research in chemical, biological warfare, so on and so forth. I'll try to make it as concise as possible. The bottom line is I was exposed over 20 years ago. I'll use this story I tell once in a while to set the baseline. Early in my intelligence career, I was exposed to a product, and I can say this now because it's nothing to do. It's the information's old enough. It doesn't matter if it was top secret. I was exposed to a United Nations meeting where they were talking about the progress on AIDS. And one of the reports coming out of that in the audio recording was one of the UN members saying, well, we can't have that. Looking around the committee going, what? What do you mean you can't have progress? And quote, how are we going to control the population? So as a young intelligence analyst, I'm thinking, well, what's that got to do with anything? And it wasn't part of why we were doing the research. But you fast forward, and the concise, I could tell you endless details of what happened from that date to then when we witnessed Obama and the Pentagon getting caught funding chemical and biological weapons research, which is illegal and part of the Geneva Convention issues. Okay, we got caught, so we're going to stop the funding. And the congressional leaders then, we can't do that anymore. So they took it away from the Pentagon, and then in steps Anthony Fauci, NIH, and all the subcontractors, all the LLCs, and all the grants, and so on and so forth. They were just the same stuff, a different funding source. And so then you have people like me who witnessed chemical and biological weapons research phrases turn to gain of function. What? We're reading reports where we see this gain of function. What? Why are we seeing that phrase? So you're talking raw reporting behind the scenes, intelligence officers trying to prepare a battle space for soldiers, warriors, to keep them safe. And we're seeing stuff about gain of function. What the heck does that got to do with anything? It's easy for me to talk about this in hindsight because of what we've been through. But at the end of the day, it's a data point up here. So then you're talking about fast forward, mass death, and COVID's coming and we're all going to die, and the hysteria and the narratives and on they go. We wrote about Wuhan at that time, probably 15 years prior to the initial accusation. We wrote about the risks of Wuhan in documents of preparing the battle space for soldiers and airmen and Marines staying safe.
You're saying a task force or something you were on, you wrote that?
We literally wrote warning papers about the risks. That was our job, to assess and analyze and predict risk in the field.
In the field, what do you mean by in the field?
The use of chemical and biological weapons on our soldiers.
By Chinese
anyone
government, or?
It didn't matter where it came from. Our job was to
tell. You said that you were writing about Wuhan, or did you?
Yeah, we literally wrote about Wuhan years before it ever became an issue.
Because you viewed it as a
No, we warned people about the risks. We warned people about the what happened. It came straight out of the lab. It was leaked.
Yeah. I mean, anyone with a rational mind looking at the facts.
And so when you're in that space of actually warning people about how, who, what, when, where, why, you're going to start telling people.
Hold on. So you're saying you warned soldiers, or you warned?
We warned leadership. I don't want to get too far in a rabbit hole here, but the bottom line is, as a professional that's tasked with keeping our soldiers safe, it's my job to tell you what the risks are when you walk into that environment. But that's my job.
What environment? I'm so confused here. What environment are you referring to?
Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria,
the Wuhan lab have to
Northern Africa.
Well, what would the Wuhan lab have to do with
because
that?
They're doing chemical and biological weapons research.
I mean,
I don't want to disagree.
I mean, I don't believe they are. I believe they're studying, virology there, and obviously developing
Phil's saying there's a lot more going on.
When you start telling the public that a mosquito had sex with a monkey, had sex with an elephant, had sex with a blue rhinoceros on Friday at 3:00, you are the lunatic, not the person telling you that it's chemical biological weapons research.
I don't know who said that, but
it's in other words, the fact is, you start splicing and engineering biological agents, bacterias, viruses, molds. You start using natural occurring disease, and you start splicing and enhancing and gain of functioning them.
Yep.
Okay. There is a purpose in that. Now you can
Yes, I agree with that. But so you're thinking that there was a nefarious purpose and it was planned?
I can't be in the head of an Anthony Fauci or a Bill Gates. I can't be in their head of what they think they're doing. But let's break it down to a farmer. I farm. I raise beef, cattle, and chickens. If you come to my farm and you try to tell me that I'm going to mutate the herd on purpose to avoid this or that possible outcome, you're going to first have to describe to me, well, how are you going to biologically and chemically change that, genetically change that herd? You're going to have to try to tell me the outcome of those genetic changes. And you're going to have a pretty hard time getting off my farm if you try to do that to my herd. I know that sounds really abstract, but you're talking about mutating viruses and splicing them with things. I can buy the discussion about genuine research to get ahead of things. I can buy that. But when you start doing things scientifically that are not naturally occurring and no possible way to naturally occur, you have stepped beyond the scientific and intellectually and morally correct path. You are no longer talking about trying to protect humanity.
I definitely agree with you, and the risks are what we all bore during the pandemic. What I guess I'm having a hard time understanding is you're using yourself as an analyst, military intelligence analyst, and you uncovered the Wuhan lab, and I don't understand why that is. I would understand if, like, prepping the Iraq battle space for and looking into an Iranian program, that would make sense to me. But why would Wuhan?
Okay, so remember,
be on your radar?
I was setting the stage or the baseline to your actual question. What would you have done different? My particular expertise and my particular knowledge base, I never would have put a mask on anybody. I never would have shut you down in your homes. I never would have used remdesivir, because remdesivir alone has been on record for decades of killing a large percentage of their patients, of shutting down their organs. And this governor doubled down and tripled down on protocols that caused unimaginable and uncalculated harm. And even after being told that they're causing harm, did more of it and doubled down on the rhetoric. You can't tell me at that point an intelligent person isn't doing that, what he did. You can't tell me that wasn't nefarious.
Do you think our issue is that the governor was able to do this because there's an emergency powers chapter in Minnesota law, chapter 12, and certainly the interpretation by the courts, but interpretation by just the yes men in the what is the council called, whatever the council is, allowed him to get away with what he did. As governor, I think that law should be repealed to the extent where any emergency powers are a supermajority of the legislature, and even if they have to call in their vote because of whatever the emergency is, it's not going to be unilateral. Governor can't just declare himself essentially king, as Walz did. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, there shouldn't be the ability to do what he did.
Okay.
And their legislation should change. The bottom line is, in that circumstance, would it have done anything? I feel like you and I are probably going to become good friends, because I would rather have this conversation
You're
than
a Navy guy. I was Army. There's just no chance.
So that explains everything. So the deal is I think you're underestimating the amount of money that was used, the amount of white-collar criminal activity that was used to influence this. The Doge reporting, the aftermath, the clear reports of what people did unethically and immorally. After the fact, you can look at it. I know it's all hindsight, but still during it, people were being told, you are off track. And rather than to ask questions, we get to this oligarch, totalitarian, like top down, everybody shut up and listen. We're all going to die if you don't listen to me. That kind of rhetoric, that kind of approach it's not just about COVID. Mm-hmm. That is what they're up to, period. And it ties back to the leadership and the failure in leadership. And the failure, quite frankly, a lot of us, I'll be hard on ourselves here in Minnesota, it's partly to blame for us.
By us, what do you mean by that?
We're all too busy. We can't get involved.
Well, yeah, that is a problem.
And it's partly our own fault. Why are we tolerating any of this? Why are we tolerating what was done to us?
Yep.
And there's still no consequences. Nobody's been held accountable.
Right.
I went into part of this on the Professor Penn podcast, and I got a little bit of heat, but 1 out of 100. The other 99 were like, well, yeah, thank you, Phil, for talking about that, because that's what we knew the whole time. Why didn't somebody talk about it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the Never Again pledge by Action for Liberty?
Never give?
Never Again pledge.
Oh, Never Again. I think I've read it briefly here and there, but I'm not very
All right,
familiar.
take a look at that pledge and the bill, the Never Again
Oh, okay,
bill.
good. Yeah.
That would be what repeals the governor's mercy powers.
Right, yeah, I didn't realize you were referring to that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the other issues that you're using in your campaign? Like, why are you running against Tim Walz?
I'm not just running against Tim Walz. I'm running against a culture of disrespect to our hardworking Minnesotans. Most of them are hardworking. I'm a little bit of an analyst geek or data geek. The majority of Minnesota is hardworking poor. They're in the hardworking poor category. There's a related percentage that would be called the hardworking middle class. I think they're the forgotten majority of Minnesota. And because of our compromised media, the majority of Minnesota that could actually vote and change the direction we're on, they don't get the information except for podcasts like yours or My Freedom Talk with Phil or Professor Penn, and we're gaining a lot of traction. You and I were talking about this, Jesse. Mm-hmm. It's gaining a lot of traction, and with Elon Musk changing the playing field with X, it's insane the amount of data stuff that I analyze behind the scenes, the insane progress that we've had, not just for myself, but people like us that are getting our news and our articles out there. It's undeniable. Mm-hmm. People can call me a conspiracy theorist or a lunatic all they want. I don't care. The data doesn't lie. And the data says that people like us, my show, shows across the state, podcasts, I got a dozen podcasts lined up in the campaign already. The majority of Minnesotans, why I'm doing this. And I've had enough, and we're tired. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of being exploited. We're tired of being told, oh, we're a bad person if we stand up for tax-paying citizens who are barely making it, having increases in health insurance, and you're giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to people that,
came here illegally.
They're paying taxes. Are you kidding me?
I assume she means sales tax on that.
When's the last time?
Right. What else is she referencing there? I assume.
When's the last time some people have read the Doge reporting with regards to? Do you know how many Social Security numbers are fake?
Yeah.
And where does that money go? It isn't going to the tax coffers.
Pockets. Oh, we got an Amber Alert?
Of course, we're in a.
It's a severe thunderstorm warning.
Severe thunderstorm right during the.
I got an alert for that too.
Are you kidding me?
So if the stream drops, it is not my fault this time.
It's not our fault.
My wife's gonna be all excited now. There's a stream. So what? Yeah. Hold on. What's going on here? Weather.com.
Yeah, it says thunderstorm.
Thunderstorm.
It was tornado.
And isn't that interesting how everything's a crisis nowadays?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
climate change.
It's
Phil.
80 degrees.
Climate change.
It's 80 degrees. We're all gonna die.
We are gonna die, and it's all man-made. The climate's never changed until we came along.
Yeah.
Wait, have you changed your opinion on that at all, Dawson? Are you still kind of? He still bought into the narrative.
Dawson,
we'll get Dawson there.
climate change guy.
Yeah, listen, in Dawson's...
Jake agrees with me on a big point. Humans cause some of it.
Yeah, I think it's unreasonable to believe that people don't have a effect on the climate that they live in.
Yeah.
It's just that, the Antarctic ice shelf has actually grown by a massive amount in the last year.
Right.
It's not good.
It's just
We were all supposed to be underwater in 2014.
Yeah.
It's
Seriously.
amazing. It's amazing how wrong they got it for a science that's...
I wrote a piece about this just the other day. You should look it up. I'm not trying to proselytize. Yeah, I'm trying to sell myself. But look up the piece I did about northern Minnesota is on fire.
No, we got to take... Let's not handle this right now because we got to take baby steps with Dawson.
Okay.
We'll get. Listen, I am so excited that Joe Rogan, just on the podcast in the last couple of weeks, has been completely red-pilled on that issue because I've listened to Joe Rogan for over a decade. Actually, I would say that well over a decade because that's why I thought, oh, what is this podcast all about? Oh, I should do one in politics. So I would reference Joe Rogan as the reason I even never started a Living Free podcast back then with Jack. And he was not. He was bought into the narrative. And I understand for people that don't understand the political part of it, why you believe in the narrative. Certainly when the media keeps telling you that, hey, these wildfires, this and that, these hurricanes are getting stronger. It's like, well, they keep telling us that. It seems like, anecdotally, it seems like they're correct on it. There's 2 massive wildfires in northern Minnesota. We ignore the fact that fires used to just go through the range of North America on a repeated basis. But, I think if you, I already had believed it was a scam prior to COVID, but if you go through COVID and you see what they did on that in the name of the science, you go, holy shit, science is heavily corrupted by politics and money.
People don't want to discuss or face the fact that a primary part of our industry is based on getting you to buy or purchase or influence your behavior based on propaganda. People don't want to talk about it. Now, to Dawson's defense, we have climate issues.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Did I just hear the sirens out there?
Let me go take a look. I know
Give
it's
it a look
bad.
here. Sorry.
We have.
I just assume we're fine here.
There also is a tornado warning. That's what I would be more worried.
Well, a tornado warning means there's a touchdown.
I'm more
or
worried
a funnel
about.
that's been spotted.
I'm more worried about traffic than anything, but we'll see.
That's Minnesota. Let's go to the Eagle cam out there. Oh, it doesn't look that bad.
No, that's a siren going off though.
That is a siren going off? You know how soundproof this studio is?
You have good ears because I can't hear it.
Yeah, I can't hear it at all.
And I just barely got that. Brad Gaddis says, trust the science, Jake. Well, tornado warnings in St. Paul, says Brad. Well, we're west of St. Paul.
This is a pretty good place to be for a tornado, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Is it?
There's
no windows.
I think we're fine.
Isn't this a cement
I
room?
think we're good. It's interesting. Mark Kroll says, get in the basement. No, it's flooded. It's 14 feet of water.
Right.
Yeah, right.
We can't go
You
in
can
there.
drown or blow away. Which one do you want?
There you go. See, this is the problem with the Republicans negotiating. 19 feet of water, now it's 14 feet of water. It's still not safe.
You can drown.
Now I need to go in the basement. The tornado's here.
Yeah.
Stop raining in Gold Valley rain. I just saw this big cloud, and all I can think of, and this is maybe I'm just getting to that age, is, oh, great, my lawn really needs it.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not raining outside yet, is it, Dawson? Or
No, but it's got that.
it's got that greenish.
It's got like almost the Breaking Bad filter going on out there. So
Oh, yeah.
Oh Lord, that's well done. Yeah, yep.
I like Dawson. He's good.
Yeah, no, we like Dustin around here too. It's gonna take a while on the climate change,
Yeah,
I mean, Phil, there weren't tornadoes in Minnesota until recently.
Yeah, right.
I hope
climate
that was
change.
sarcasm.
One of the most interesting stories. So my dad's a Lutheran pastor. He was an ELCA pastor, and I was in Iraq during this 2009, I think it was, and that was when the ELCA decided to ordain gay clergy. My dad, being a traditionalist, scriptural based, which is a very big difference than the rest of the ELCA, was opposed to it. He said that at the convention, which happened in downtown Minneapolis, and this is, I should say, my dad said this is what happened. The church that they were meeting at, I think they were at a lunch at a different place at the time, but a tornado hit downtown Minneapolis, and tornadoes just generally don't hit the downtown areas. Do you know this story? And the only damage it left was the cross and the steeple where the church was happening.
At that meeting.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
I mean, you just don't generally have tornadoes in downtown areas I guess because it changes the
buildings have an effect on it. The last time I heard about a tornado causing any kind of severe damage was a couple years ago, I guess, before I started working here in like Babbitt, Minnesota or some.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we got a tornado in here with all the new cabinets going in, so
that would be fitting.
Now I hear the impact driver. We are an hour and a half into it, so I do want to. Mark Coral says,
I got,
go ahead.
Just to your earlier point when we were talking about the Wuhan lab, I was looking it up. I didn't realize this, but the Wuhan Institute of Virology was created in 1956, so I would have figured that it was a more recent thing, but it has been around the block and it's been around for a while, so that is interesting stuff to know. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, you had talked about when you had ran for MNGOP chair against David Hand, I think it was in 2022. And obviously the fix seemed like it was in at that convention. I was there as a guest because they at first weren't allowing you to speak. And can you just describe what was going on there? And I think Kendall Qualls was the one who gave the introduction speech for David Hand, who is now your opponent. So go ahead and just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a very interesting situation. And to your point earlier, there are a lot of good people in the Minnesota Republican Party. Don't get me wrong.
Very much so.
Very solid, good people. And I only got to speak, which you are saying you witnessed, which is, your living proof of those good people. Even some people that I've been at odds with stood up and say, no, we're going to listen to Phil. And it was a very powerful moment. Win or lose, that spoke a lot to me. And the evidence of what we have witnessed in a shift, like you were saying, the state central leadership has changed, but there's still that old central core crusty crew that is literally crusty. Anyway, there is a shift, especially now with Trump winning again, especially now that we've been through COVID and what all we've witnessed and had to live through. There is a shift in the political spectrum that I don't believe the traditional Republicans, traditional Democrats, I don't think they're prepared for. That's part of why I backed again about my point about changing the playing field or changing the arena. You're going to play in my arena. I'm not playing in yours.
Well, it seemed like there was David Hand supporters who had also signed on to your petition, and because of that, it had canceled out those signatures, which meant that you didn't have the required signatures to be able to speak. So it seemed the establishment was pulling.
Was there a premeditated game leading up to?
Right.
Oh my goodness, we could bore everyone to tears with how that happened, and it is partially true, yes. And that's part of the strategic problem of why you're back to the endorsement question. Hey, Alex, can the party get their ship in order, get everything in line and on course, and actually honor the endorsement process themselves? And with the legislation the way it is, with the calendar the way it is, with the Steve Simon as the SOS and Keith Ellison and Tim Walz, they aren't going to change the calendar. They aren't going to change the process. It's a losing game before you start. So stop playing the losing game and start playing a winning game.
Well, I don't understand what you mean by that. How's that a losing game? They've been very good at actually, well, how good are they doing? I don't know if they're doing much, but the endorsed candidate has won the primary for governor as far as I can remember.
What Republicans won
the endorsed Republican candidates always won the primary for governor in Minnesota.
I'm talking about winning the governor, winning.
Oh, you're saying, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
so
right.
Actually
winning.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one. I
don't want to almost win anymore. To me, that's almost win. Okay, we won the primary. Well, so what? I don't care.
Yeah.
Why didn't you win?
Yeah, we have got to beat the Democrats, but we have to beat the Democrats with a team of people that actually want to fundamentally change government.
I think we have to beat the political elite. I think you're right on track.
Well, that's the problem that we have is we always are fighting the elite that use the Republican ranks
and it's because
and that's Tom Emmer right now. And then once we get past that, then we have to take on the Democrats.
But the old behavior of always playing the partisan politics, always all the way through the election, has got to stop. That's why if you read my website, you read exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm appealing to Democrats, Libertarians, Republicans, Independents, Green Party, Marijuana Party called me for crying out loud the other day. The thing is that Minnesotans are sick and tired of being Republican and Democrat, either one. They're sick of it.
Right.
99% of who comes to my rallies, calls me on the phone, email, chat, messenger. I can't keep up with messenger. It's all about, I'm sick to death of the partisan politics. And that's the playing field that I'm trying to establish. I'm trying to establish a level playing field in an arena that actually has some meat to it. Because I'm not playing this divisive rhetoric garbage anymore. I'm playing to win, and that's it. And the rest is just distraction to me.
And then once you win, what's just maybe top 3 priorities that you would have?
And the fraud.
Okay.
A lot of people are going to lose their jobs in the bureaucracy.
Ooh, you can't fire government employees. What are you talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Well, that's good.
If you're not doing a job that's providing direct positive outcome for citizens, you're not going to be there when I get done with you.
Wing says, no tornado sirens by me yet, but it's pouring rain here and my power just went out. Wait, you had power?
There has been tornado touchdowns a couple hours from us, so nothing.
Leave it
crazy.
to today.
Oh, that's the tornado warning? Is that far away? Chicken bones.
It's a
maybe.
conspiracy.
We have the warning here, but that's where they saw a touchdown already.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Interesting stuff. Well, I think we'll be secure here. I'm just happy that my lawn gets watered.
Right.
Because I live in Lake Elmo, and we only can water a lawn 2 times a week.
Wow.
You know, I'll tell you what, Minnesota, this is such a Minnesotan thing. It's like having a Lund boat and wearing socks with your Crocs. It used to be sandals, now it's Crocs. This is about as Minnesota gets, is water issues defining the politics.
Right.
I mean, I have a store. I was door knocking for a candidate once, and I came across this lady. And I think I came across her. Maybe the candidate did it. And she just started yelling and lost her mind. Unless you're here to solve the damn water problem, I don't want to hear anything from a politician like you. And he eventually had to walk. Okay, so we must have been together because he then walked. I remember him walking away and going, "Oh man, all right, she doesn't want to talk." We make a couple of houses down the street, and then all of a sudden this car pulls up, and here's the lady in the car.
Oh Lord.
Looking at him, and she goes, "Are you Alan Duff?" And they're like totally different thing. Yes, I'm Tony's mom. I am so sorry. And I was just like, oh my God. Great conversation. Became like a donor and supporter of him. But it was like, it was the water issue, and she connected any politician. It didn't matter who it was coming to her door at that point. Because I don't even remember what the water issue was. It's probably a water fan like I got. And it was like, that's it right there.
Yeah.
Like a little rain during work as yard's drying out with these high temps. Well, I do what I can, razzle dazzle. I mean, I'm a glass half full kind of guy in that one.
You said you can only water your lawn 2 times. Is that like?
You want to hear why? So Lake Elmo
yeah.
is probably the fastest growing community in the state of Minnesota. If you don't know Lake Elmo, it's right outside of Stillwater. Love where I own a house. I'm glad that I bought in Lake Elmo because it's the community I wanted to be in. My wife and I did. Actually, technically, my wife wanted to be in Woodbury and I wanted to be in Alaska, so we compromised in Lake Elmo. And so I like Lake Elmo when we bought it. Now it's becoming the fastest growing thing. The farm fields. There was this gorgeous farm right across from Gorman's, which are good conservatives. Right across from this gorgeous green, like I can't even call it a lawn. It was a field, but the way the grass was, it looked like a lawn. And we're talking about, I don't know, 30 acres. I mean, this guy had a tractor and still mowed it. And it was just gorgeous. It's right there by downtown Lake Elmo. And in the last year, that has now been taken over. And I mean, these houses are popping up like within weeks. And it's like Lake Elmo's building so fast. Well, we have a well issue, and the DNR won't let us drill new wells to meet the demand. And so there's nothing stopping the growth of houses and businesses, but there's nothing to keep up with that growth because the DNR won't let us drill wells. And even if we drill wells, we got a freaking problem with 3M's chemicals in our water. So it's like we're doomed. And so, yeah, essentially, so that people don't have a shortage of water in peak times, you can only water 2 times a week, and it's got to be certain hours. I know I have a lot of people probably in the comments that have this. Becky, you can't water because the government says so. The government also says you can't have your own well, and the government also requires you to use their water. I know, exactly. Luckily, I take out their bad chemicals in my water.
I wonder if that'll be an issue when I eventually move up to DL and get a house. Probably not, but maybe.
Who knows? Let's get this last segment here. Do you know MCCL, Minnesota Citizens Compromised for Life? Do you know about them at all?
Yes, okay. A little bit. Yep.
All right. They had quite a statement against Action for Liberty the other day. Now, we did a segment on Tuesday, really calling out this group, which is a pro-life group, but boy, they run it in a very interesting way. So, Napkin Nate says Lake Elmo, the Flint, Michigan, and Minnesota.
Yeah.
Jake, you should have 3M leak Ozempic into the water supply, says O'Bannon. We got the best fans. So MCCL does so we do a segment on MCCL calling out because they apparently wrote a letter about us. Calling out Republican legislators. Do you know how abortion gets funded in Minnesota? Are you aware of the mechanism?
Slightly.
There's a program called the Medical Assistance Program. It's federal Medicaid money that gets appropriated at the state level. And they tuck it into these 100-page omnibus bills, which already are unconstitutional, let alone all the other bad things in it. They sneak it into that, and and that money goes towards funding abortion. Now, MCCL rightfully says that there was a court case, Doe versus Gomez, in the Minnesota Supreme Court, I think it was 95, that said that when that money is appropriated, that money does have to go to all health care, which is funding abortion. I don't know how killing someone's health care, but okay. So that's the court position, right? First of all, it's one branch of the government's opinion. So they provide cover for Republicans for voting for this, and we go, well, listen, if you really believe in life and that you are pro-life and you want to save babies, you shouldn't support that omnibus bill that has the funding for it, right? If the medical assistance program was slaughtering unborn babies, if it was slaughtering cute little puppies, if it was slaughtering the Jews, you wouldn't support that program, right? I mean, I think they get the analogy if it like literally is putting Jews in concentration camps, you would say, oh, well, the Supreme Court decided on that case, so there's nothing we could do. No, you won't vote for that omnibus bill for multiple reasons, but you wouldn't vote for that omnibus bill that carries the funding for that. Or if it was killing little puppies, you wouldn't vote for that. But for some reason, an abortion, they go, oh, let's just ignore the fact that that's the mechanism that funds it. And so the principled vote is to vote no on that and fix this issue. And by the way, if Republicans are bringing the bill, stop putting those in omnibus bills, right? Put that as a segmented thing. So they are 100% voting for abortion or taxpayer funded. And even if you don't necessarily think like I am and be pro-life, what you're doing is you're still taking taxpayer money, and some of those taxpayers or half of those taxpayers don't agree with that procedure. That's just wrong. I mean, I don't argue for taxpayers funding guns for me because some people don't believe in guns, okay? So we shouldn't do that. Okay, so MCCL puts this email out Tuesday night. Get ready for this. It says, Dear pro-life friend, every pro-lifer in Minnesota needs to know about a grave new threat to the lives of unborn children in our state. A libertarian-leaning group that calls itself Action for Liberty. A wave of dead children lies in their wake.
That is crazy.
Look at these people are nuts. Action for Liberty claims to be conservative, but it's actually a political group whose goal is to take over the Republican Party in Minnesota and reshape to its libertarian vision. While there are libertarians who are pro-life, yeah, like me, right? Right? Like very pro-life. Like my first political issue was pro-life. I did the March for Life in La Crosse when I was like in middle school with my family because my dad's a Lutheran pastor, right? So while there are libertarians who are pro-life, a strong strain within that movement is not. I love I just get like that Trump impression in my mind. what does he say? Fake? Or no, he says wrong. No, he says wrong. That's the old meme when Trump goes wrong. Yeah. That's just wrong. It's not true at all. Here are the facts and why this group so threatens unborn children in Minnesota. How Action for Liberty costs unborn lives. Action for Liberty almost never criticizes Democrats. Wrong. Virtually all of their attacks are against pro-life Republican legislators and members of Congress.
Wrong.
Geez, I wonder what member of Congress they have a problem with. I don't know. They're run by Michelle Fischbach's husband.
I'm seeing a little bit of an angle now.
Yeah. You see that? Their waves of such attacks. Oh, we got a rumble rant. Go ahead and read it.
Phil Cannon, $5 rumble rant says MCCL does not care about dead babies. They care about supporting the candidates that they want to center, and they want to own center-right politics. That's how they get their own. That's how they get their money. F them.
Well, I certainly would think there are people at MCCL that cares about abortion,
the
but
grassroots
I don't know if I
supporters,
fully attribute them being a complete con. They might just be bad at politics. Okay, I mean they're literally crazy people. Look at like what they're writing. This is a crazy thing to write. Like the string of deaths of dead babies is on them. Whatever. So they say their waves of such attacks in the 2022 elections weakened Republican candidates for state Senate, causing Republicans to lose control of that chamber by just one vote. That gave radical Democrats control of state Senate, state House, and governorship. The trifecta that for 2 years passed laws that gravely damaged Minnesota families, our freedoms, and the unborn. What followed? Abortion up to birth, allowing newborns to be left to die, denial of parental rights across a range of issues, and directly threatens our religious liberties. All of which we wrote extensively about on here, condemning the Democrats for doing, especially the one where they allowed a baby born from botched abortion to be basically allowed to die. That's how evil the Democrat Party has become. Now think about this. This is the funny part about these crazy wackos. They are looting Action for Liberty as the cause for the election. So if Action for Liberty is really the cause that Republicans didn't win an election, maybe, just maybe, you should embrace Action for Liberty and learn how to work with them if they're the cause of their failure at election time, okay? So maybe that would be the smarter approach than just continually to anger them and distance himself from them. But that's obviously not true. We all know what happened in that election. Tom DePaul, obviously Action for Liberty people were supportive of him, lost to Judy Seeberger by 321 votes in Senate District 41. 321 votes. The whole balance of power in Minnesota came down to 321 votes. And that was the candidate. So Tom DePaul beat Tony Jurgens in the primary. Tony Jurgens, who was a state rep for many years, who was a 100% rating with MCCL, probably endorsed by them too. We couldn't find it, but 100% aligned with MCCL on their scorecard. And he endorses and campaigns for Judy Seeberger, the Democrat. So if you want to know, you fake news, MCCL, why there was a DFL trifecta, you got to be honest with people. Stop lying. It was because of Tony Jurgens, who you provided political cover for. He lost his primary, a sore loser, endorses and actively campaigns for Judy Seeberger, who tilted the whole balance of power to the Democrats.
Yeah. Yep.
And you want to put that on Action for Liberty, who was on the right side on that one? Bullshit. But, I mean, honestly, these guys are wacklebirds. You wrote an article for Action for Liberty, is that correct? I know, this is what
Dawson,
we deal with here.
Go ahead and pull up the C2, and we can go through this article because, as you've said, Jake, the Minnesota citizens compromising on life is smearing Action for Liberty with lies. And Action for Liberty is always a target of the Rhino establishment because we challenge the status quo and push Republican legislators to adhere to the party platform and not cave to radical Democrats. The most recent battle that has caused some A4L scrutiny from the Rhinos is the issue of a recent vote where many Republicans voted for an unconstitutional, massive, multi-subject budget bill for 3 different departments that included abortion spending. As seen in recent A4L reporting, a majority of the State House of Representatives voted against the legislation, but 29 of the Rhinos did vote for it. The Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, MCCL, should actually be called the Minnesota Citizens Compromising on Life, since this self-touted pro-life group is attacking A4L for exposing the Rhinos who voted to fund abortions. A real pro-life group would be fighting alongside A4L against corrupt omnibus bills that fund abortion, but the MCCL is instead attempting to provide cover for their Rhino legislator friends. The MCCL sent a mass email to Minnesotans, which we just looked at, that attempted to blame A4L for the death of unborn babies unborn babies while simultaneously defending the rhinos that funded it. The tried and failed attack lines against A4L highlight how compromised this group is to the corrupt rhino establishment. They claim, without evidence, that our group, quote, cost unborn lives, end quote, with attacks against GOP senators. It is, of course, a bogus claim to suggest that A4L attacking rhinos who fund abortion is the cause of the Democrat trifecta. But if it was true, how did the GOP take control of the state house in the following election? Obviously showing you that it is not true. The truth is that the Senate was taken over by Democrats because of Rhino Tony Jurgens endorsing radical leftist Democrat Judy Seeberger in Senate District 41 over Republican Tom DePel. Decided by just 321 votes, which means 161 flip votes, would have given the Senate to the Republicans. Rhino Tony Jurgens gave the Senate to the Democrats, not A4L. But interestingly, as Jake had said, the corrupt MCCL has given Tony Jurgens a 100% pro-life rating. Doesn't the MCCL realize that they lose credibility and trust when with the grassroots when they lie so blatantly? Why are they willing to cover for the abortion-funding rhinos rather than pushing a true pro-life message? Senator Nathan Wiesenberg of SD10 has even stated that an MCCL lobbyist, Don Parker, quote, begged him not to introduce a life at conception amendment on the Senate floor because it was, quote, too extreme.
Oh, I think it's important that we note that that letter was signed by Don Parker.
Exactly, right. Don Parker was one of the signers at the bottom of this.
What was the other one? Do we have it?
Not offhand.
I'll look it
up. But Wiesenberg instead chose to push anyway, and all Republicans ended up voting on the floor yes with his amendment because they knew that they had eyes on them and they knew that they had cover being in the minority. However, the MCCL wanted to protect the rhinos from a pro-life vote, which is the exact opposite of what pro-life Minnesotans want to see. A4L has never pushed any policy or plan that works contrary to the pro-life movement. Meanwhile, the MCCL is advocating for a bill and lying to Minnesotans by claiming that abortion is funded no matter what because of Doe v. Gomez. However, this is not true. It is funded through the Medical Assistance Program, and that has been admitted by many reps, including Rhino Jim Nash. A court cannot compel a legislator to vote a certain way.
Yeah, that's the fault of their argument here. Okay, so once medical assistance goes into law, there's nothing prohibiting it, from going to abortion, right? Mm-hmm. That's what Doe v. Gomez does. But they almost make it sound like a legislator has nothing they could do. They're forced to vote for it. And it's like, no, if that's the case, well, why do we even have a legislature? Why doesn't the Supreme Court just decide everything? Of course you do. You have the power of the purse. You don't appropriate the money. Do you really believe in saving lives? Actually, Walter had a really interesting admission on a tweet yesterday. He goes, so we'll lose the next election and the Democrats get trifecta? Well, I'm glad he admits that instead of voting to protect human lives, assuming he is pro-life, you would rather care about your reelection. And there's no obvious way that you could tell you're going to lose the next election because of that, but just making that assumption, you've placed a higher priority on getting reelected than actually saving human lives.
Yep. And yeah, as Jake has just said there, a court cannot compel a legislator to vote a certain way, because why else would a majority of the state house representatives, of the Republican state house reps, vote against the bill? That's the only reasoning. If all 67 House Republicans held a hard line and refused to support the unconstitutional abortion and Planned Parenthood funding omnibus bill, the GOP would not have to fund medical assistance and should instead not accept any bill that is not in line with Article 4, Section 17 of the Minnesota Constitution, which limits a bill to a single subject. Action for Liberty is taking the hardline position on the fight against taxpayer-funded abortion and Planned Parenthood. The MCCL's attacks against us on this issue proves that they are a totally fake pro-life group masquerading as such to fool conservatives and take their money. According to the MCCL's website, their mission is to, quote, secure protections for innocent human life from conception until natural death through effective education, legislation, and political action, end quote. The MCCL is failing to push their own mission because they are supporting taxpayer-funded abortions. The MCCL has blood on their hands. The MCCL has even made an anti-pro-life commercial with Michelle Tafoya.
Have you ever seen that? All right, let's go on. Click on that.
Go ahead and click it. I've got a link in
there.
They
ran this in the 2024 election, trying to win over independent voters.
Scroll down, Dawson.
And they literally have a pro-choice person on here and saying that sometimes women have to make tough decisions. Go ahead and listen to this here.
I've been in the media long enough to know a spin cycle when I see one. Democrats are running ads saying Republicans will ban abortions. Really? I know sometimes women have to make difficult decisions, but I also know Minnesotans want reasonable abortion laws. The truth is, the state Supreme Court has already ruled. Any abortion ban would immediately be declared unconstitutional, period. So when the Dems say there's going to be a ban, they're lying to you.
Can you believe a pro-life group would put out a message that essentially sells out on your core issue?
It's par for the course, though, because everything that you just talked about is predictable in the arena that we've all been coping with.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's all predictable because, again, they're not doing the work. They're not doing the due diligence. They're hiding behind these. It's buried in the bill, and I couldn't do anything about it.
Yep.
Actually, it's funny, though, Phil, because Action for Liberty highlighting this issue and then getting this onslaught of attacks, it elevated this issue so big to the point where they aren't hiding behind it. They were addressing it. And
Good.
We have Jim Nash referencing medical assistance program.
Don
Weiner.
Gilman, Isaac Schultz, Mike Weiner.
Mike Weiner. His great speech, I think I put it on Facebook. Great speech, also highlighting to it. And then Nathan Wiesberg on the Senate floor yesterday had an amendment that would remove funding for abortion. Now, that would clearly be a challenge in the courts, obviously, but had an amendment to remove medical assistance going to abortion with 100% support by Republicans, 100% votes against it by Democrats yesterday. Why would he have an amendment, and why would all Republicans support it if that bill didn't fund abortions? So MCL, it's so obvious what you're saying is a complete lie.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And just to wrap up on this article here, as we just played with that commercial there, that the MCCL made an anti-pro-life commercial with Michelle Tafoya. Do not forget that this is a Democrat bill that only had Democrats as authors in the House and Senate. The MCCL is playing cover for a Democrat bill that funds abortion and Planned Parenthood. While Planned Parenthood is generally thought of for abortion, they are also doing, quote, gender-affirming care whenever and however we can under law, end quote, in Minneapolis, according to their webpage. So, Dawson, go ahead and click webpage right there. I want people to be able to see. According to the Planned Parenthood website, they are the ones who are pushing gender-affirming care. So it's not just abortion. They're also pushing the transgender crap. And who knows if any of this money is going to be directed towards that cause. You can go back to the article. It
100% will. And that was also something that was passed through the DFL trifecta.
Right.
That government funding has to go towards gender-affirming care.
Right.
We shouldn't use their terminology. We know what gender-affirming care is.
Right, it's transgender surgeries.
Yeah, it's either surgeries or it's hormone treatments, and I'm not convinced that the surgeries is the bad one.
Right.
You get to understand what they're giving and prescribing.
Yep. Right. So the MCCL is willing to excuse millions of dollars of taxpayer spending going to Planned Parenthood and medical assistance abortions just because there are some funding for pregnancy centers. How pathetic. The MCCL's executive director, Scott Fishbach, is the husband of Rhino Congresswoman Michelle Fishbach of CD7. The Fishbachs have shown their hand for the public to see. They want to control MNGOP chair Alex Plekish. So far, it's working. Plekish is repeating the MCCL's lies about abortion funding and put out an endorsement for Fishbach in 2026 on behalf of the MNGOP. This blatantly violates Article 4, Section 8 of the MNGOP bylaws, which requires neutrality from party officers until a candidate is endorsed. Plekish is spitting in the face of the conservative delegates who withheld their party endorsement from Fishbach against conservative Steve Boyd despite her incumbency in the last go-around. And go ahead and go back to the article, Dawson, just so people can see the actual rule. They can see within Section 8 there, it specifically says the party officers generally have the responsibility to organize or cause to be organized each precinct in the state and to seek out qualified candidates and encourage them to seek public office. No party officer shall use their official position to promote pre-primary endorsement, support, or induce the candidacy of an individual by assuring party support prior to any endorsement of the convention, which is representative of the entire electorate of the office. So as you can see, it very clearly establishes that no party officer is allowed to be doing that. And I also link the tweet here where Plekish is putting out the pre-primary endorsement of Michelle Fishbach. People can read all of the details there. But grassroots conservatives have certainly...
What was the date of that?
That was March,
scroll up a little bit, Dawson, just so we can see the date of that tweet.
March.
It's at the bottom there. March 19th, 2025.
So just so people understand, the new election segment starts in 2025, right? And this is how it works, campaign finance, all that stuff. So this is the new 2-year election segment, which no one's gone to caucus and become delegates.
Correct.
And this is what we brought up earlier, and I don't know why I didn't think of this before. This is rigging. This is an election rigging.
Yes.
Alex Plekish is rigging an election or he's rigging an endorsement for Michelle Fischbach by making a statement like that. Why would you make a statement like that?
Right.
What's the point in someone? Aren't you discouraging people to actually participate in the process, Alex, by just saying, well, we endorse this lady. There's no point in showing up. That's the whole point in showing up, is because you want to actually weigh in to the endorsements of the party. Yeah. And he's just saying, no, this person's got her full endorsements. Like, that's an insane thing to do. And turns out is this party constitution or is this the bylaws?
That's in the bylaws.
Bylaws. It's against the bylaws.
Right. It's totally ridiculous. And, it makes me think that it's not just Tom Emmer that's looking to control Alex Plekish, but it's also obviously the Fischbachs. And just to wrap up the article here, conservative grassroots delegates have certainly let their opinion be known on the party platform on the topic of abortion. As seen on the MNGOP website, the party platform remains listed as the, quote, State Party Platform 2022 party. Because the establishment has tried for years to scrap the entire platform and replace it with language that does not include pro-life provisions. The only way delegates could oppose the establishment's takeover of the platform over the years is to simply keep the 2022 platform intact. This bill violates the party platform as the platform opposes both abortions and omnibus spending bills. Yet the party chair fights against the will of the delegates. And also, the MCCL is trying to say that if we have libertarians in the party, they're going to try to take over the platform and get rid of the pro-life sections. That's not true. The A4L people who have been going to these conventions are the one who are trying to protect the platform, while the Rhino establishment is the ones who are trying to replace it. So Action for Liberty will continue to correct the record when scam groups like MCCL attempt to smear our names when we are informing citizens in the same way that they should be. The MCCL is a phony pro-life group that is fighting for the interests of the pro-abortion legislation. Unfortunately, the MCCL smears and attacks against A4L are so transparently dishonest that they have the opposite effect than the Rhino's intended consequences. The MCCL has now been exposed. They have exposed themselves as a fake pro-life group and have legitimized A4L as the leader in fighting corrupt omnibus bills in our state. Patriots have wisened up to the smears and are not falling for it. A4L is and will continue to be strong as ever. So the MCCL attacks are not working. People are seeing through it, and it's unfortunate that a supposedly pro-life group is defending Planned Parenthood and abortion funding.
And that's the best part, what you just wrote, is people waking up to it and they're getting smart about it. And I like that. I do see that happening every day. It's not just this show. It's not just A4L's website. It's just
right.
People getting out there and going, something's not right. And the reason I uncovered this, and I think it goes back to like 2019, I uncovered this this medical assistance program. I was reading an MCCL letter or email or something like that, and it said abortion funding in Minnesota is the largest it's ever been. It must have been 2019. Right. And I thought, well, that's interesting. 2019, but Republicans had majority in the House and Senate, right? So how is abortion funding at its highest ever? And so I looked and inquired how it gets funded. And I go, oh my God, it's in the HHS omnibus bill that they're all voting for. Right. And someone put on, I think, Facebook the other day, go, I looked at the bill and I didn't find abortion there. No, they don't do you any courtesy and write abortion.
Yeah.
It's not in there. It's the medical assistance program. You could just go to statements by these legislators admitting that's what it is. It's just like with the budget. They don't tell you the actual figures. They tell you the change to the baseline, as they call it, or the projected expenditures.
And I'd suggest that a lot of these legislators aren't doing the due diligence that you did.
Mm-hmm. No, that's the sad thing.
They're not doing the work.
Right.
I asked you if you've seen the budget, figures before. Majority of legislators at the Capitol have no idea. I wondered if Walter wouldn't debate me on the show because he has literally no idea on the budget, right? Because when he challenged our assessment on the budget, I was like, well, let's stop talking tough on Twitter. Come on the show. Or actually, I said, come on any platform. I'll come on any platform and debate this with you because you guys, your budget sucks. Oh, and just so people know, in the courtesy of fair discussion and open dialogue, I did write to MCCL and invite him on today's show. And that offer still stands. I mean, I think they're probably too chicken shit to do it because they know, and this is the other thing, is they're a Christian, they believe, they portray themselves as a Christian organization. This is the thing that gets me, Phil. All these supposed Christians in politics, and I watch them openly lie. And that's the problem that I have. I know, they know I know this stuff, and they know they're lying, but they do it anyhow. And it's like, wow, that's pretty deeply evil in my opinion.
Yeah, I had a recent experience that ties to this in a small way. I put out a piece. There's a priest that I can't remember his name right now, but it's in my thread in X. I retweeted it or we reposted it on X, and I gave my little commentary above it. And again, 99%, everybody's like, go, Phil, go. But this one person, and I'm going to keep it real vague because this, could involve this one person, allegedly a Christian, to your point, tried to get me removed from my position and get me written up by the diocese and so on and so forth, because how dare he, and, because the priest made a comment about you cannot be a Democrat and a practicing Catholic. You can't. Mm-hmm. You can't do both things. To your point, you can't be a Republican and you're supporting abortion up to and after birth. I mean, this is the most grotesque, insane, evil thing you can think of, and you can't do both. And back to your question. I mean,
they would say they don't support it, but they do.
Well,
they do support the funding mechanism.
It's too easy to hide behind that shroud that you just articulated.
Yeah, I don't want to attribute that these guys don't actually, if they were placed with a vote on abortion, that they would be saying it should be legal. It's just that at some point you can't hide behind the fact that taxpayer money is going towards it. And if you really believe in the issue, you should not be funding that.
And there's a step further to this, because it's not just abortion. If you do some research into the Medicaid issues going on, again, tie it back to the Doge findings. In Minnesota, I've called Minnesota the ground zero for white-collar criminal activity for 20 years. You guys can prove that on your own research of me. When I say ground zero of white-collar criminal crimes, I'm dead serious. I've been doing this research for a long time. Again, I'm one of the whistleblowers of the daycare fraud. These people know exactly what they're doing. I would submit to you that the abortion numbers are even not accurate. And they do this on purpose for the ability to put themselves behind a shroud, make sure funding is certain places, and then they're having that essentially money laundering to carry on and continue the white-collar criminal activity behind.
Well, I mean, look, so the abortion gets funded because people take these Medicaid payments and they go to like Planned Parenthood to get abortion, okay? But this bill, the HHS Omnibus bill, just grants Planned Parenthood money for other things. And, that was interesting about Doge is they really showed the corruption in USAID.
Right.
Well, Planned Parenthood is like, I mean, don't we all understand the corruption there? It is a Democrat front. It's not.
It is.
It's not like they go, let's see, who are we going to endorse here? What is the Republicans' position? It's like the Democrats and the Democrats only. It is a Democrat front, and they give grant money in this bill for other things than just because abortion is not a grant; it's the Medicaid program. They literally give grants to Planned Parenthood.
It's a little bit of a sidebar, but think about a group of people that are so evil that they can come up with it's reproductive freedom.
I know. Yeah, we've talked about that.
It's the most insane, insidious phrase I have ever witnessed. And I've seen some horrible things on active duty.
Well, it's even worse because they say, it's women's health care. It's like
reproductive freedom?
Women's health care? Like,
how is killing people
it's not. It's
up to and after birth reproductive freedom? You do understand there's no reproduction there.
Yeah, it's not. It's being blocked.
Why I bring that up is because...
But they're messaging. They're very good at messaging.
Yeah, but still, even that messaging, they're very good at maybe. I'm thinking back to your other point about the landscape is changing a bit. People like me are reproductive freedom, and you're killing babies up to and after birth? What in God's name are you talking about? That's evil.
It is evil.
That's a level of evil that people are starting to like, okay. Like even this criticism I got of reposting this priest, one out of hundreds, possibly thousands of people that supported me, this one person, that's a level of evil that it's hard to comprehend.
Well, hopefully we can get rid of some of this evil and right the ship here in Minnesota.
Right.
Phil, I am running out of time here. It's already been over 2 hours.
It's incredible.
Thank you for joining us.
You bet.
Anything you want to plug on the way out here, your website?
Get to the parishformn.com, PARRISH, the number 4, MN.com. Interesting Election for or
Action for Liberty
Action
too.
for
Right, you have
Liberty.
the number.
So-
number
Well, they own both.
Parish
FOR too.
Parish for MN.com.
And Action for Liberty had to buy the FOR. That one was someone was cyber squatting on it. But
so yeah, get to the website, learn about more, really dig into the substance of what I'm talking about, because there's a lot of substance there. And I mean what I say. We're establishing the fighting arena this year, this coming year. And we're going to fight in our arena. We're not going to fight in their arena. We're going to fight in our arena.
Sounds good. Thanks, Phil. Thank you to our great sponsors, Warren Westliff, Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give Warren a call at 612-419-7453. If you're buying a home, go to the good guys at John Galt Mortgage Company. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com, or you could check them out on Facebook or X, Top Notch Meme Game. And also brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota. Thank you to our Rumble Rants today. O'Bannon.
Failed candidate.
Failed candidate. And there was one other.
Yeah, there was another.
Right.
Let's see.
Was it Gopher or something?
O'Bannon and let's see,
there.
Razzle Dazzle.
Oh, another
we also
one,
got
another-
Gopher Big Guy 911.
There you go.
So
Go.
yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you,
all you
guys.
guys
Appreciate
tuning
it.
in.
Awesome. We'll be live on our post show. If you want to be a post show member, $8 a month supports the show. Go to truthhurtsnews.com, click on the top and click on subscribe. Or if you're on Rumble, just click on join. We'll be live on Locals in about 2-ish minutes. I got to say goodbye to Phillip. It looks like it's already sunny out there again. So, geez, the rain's over. Shoot. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. For everyone else, we'll be back here again on Tuesday. Take care.